And the Fair Housing Act barred discrimination in housing. And it was passed, it was a long fight. It's the last piece of major civil rights legislation in the 1960s, and it got passed in a hurry, even though there had been a fight after the death of Martin Luther King. The Black Senator Edward Brooks said the following before it was passed: that people in this country look at segregation as a natural condition. And that's really the point of my book. We think that self-selection and segregation are the same thing, and they are not. Oh, well, people want to live around people like them. Oh, people have choice. They can live wherever they want to live. Or why can't poor people just move? Or I want to live around people like me. Sure, there are preferences that are there, but that's not what segregation is. Segregation is about inequity, it's about power, and it's about resources. And the government in the 20th century decided that the path to wealth ownership was going to be, to wealth building would be home ownership. And there were a set of systems in place that said Black people are not going to have the same type of wealth creation if you live in a Black neighborhood. I also feel like the way people in Chicago and the region treat segregation is like, oh, there's great architecture in the city. Lake Michigan is beautiful. We have a vibrant theater scene. Oh yeah, we're segregated. As if it's some quirky characteristic and not something that was purposeful, insidious, deliberate, harmful, and racist. And it matters because as a reporter, I kind of joke that this is my dissertation for working at WBEZ for a decade. Whenever I'm covering issues around food injustice or violence, affordable housing, public housing, lack of jobs, all roads lead back to segregation. Our political class and our business class in this city do not acknowledge that. The people in power in different ways, I've heard too many times, segregation is not my job to fix. That was there before. What can I do about it? But I want people to examine the segregation in their own lives. That doesn't mean I want you to look around and say, I have no Black friends, let me go rent a Black friend. I want you to think about your leisure activities. I want you to think about the choice of where you live. And the you is a universal you, just not the people in this room. I have yet to hear anyone with family or school-aged children say, I want to live in a neighborhood with shitty schools and mean streets. Everybody wants the same thing. A very easy way to think about the segregation in your lives beyond housing is how do you spend your leisure activities. So I'm going to use arts as an example. If you love the theater, I'm not saying give up your subscription to the Goodman Theater. Art, food, and culture are good entree points into neighborhoods. And so try a different community theater and then go to dinner in that community. Most people in this region get their information about Black people through the news. They see who got shot today or last night, and that taints their whole vision of what these communities look like. On a national basis, I think that we have two extremes. We have the image of Blackness is the perp walk on the news, someone being arrested, low income, poor, or exceptionalism. Obama, Oprah, athletes, celebrities, actors, actresses. There's a whole invisibility of the Black middle and working class in this country as well in this city. But what about our other cultural exports? House music is one of our biggest cultural exports. I'm sure everyone in here has heard of Lollapalooza. Has anyone heard of the Chosen Few picnic in Jackson Park? If you're Black, don't raise your hand. Tens of thousands of people in July, and people from all over the world come. And the funny, so Tony says there's never been a shooting, and it's a little heartbreaking for me. I don't go because it's just a bit much. I've been once and that was enough, but I would encourage people to go. It's a wonderful event. But that following week, there's so many posts on Facebook And inevitably they say, look at what was happening on the South Side and there was no shooting. Part of me doesn't like that statement because I feel like it's for the white gaze. Like, we shouldn't have to think about those things. But I also understand that this is the reality of the city that we live in, and these are the stereotypes. And it is important that for people to know, Black people can convene in large numbers and nothing untoward happens. There isn't any tragedy. But there's so much that we don't even know about our own city. And I think once we start acknowledging that segregation is something that is not a natural condition, it is something that was man-made, we can start focusing on solutions.
How did you from the beginning think you had something unique? I mean, I've read books on the history of Chicago. You've read personal memoirs. You have that unique combination that I think made this book really special, because it wasn't just data and history, it was hearing your perspective and living it out, your families, your friends, your life. Was that always part of the plan in writing the book? Was that a struggle for you to think, I'm gonna talk about my financial experience?
Right. It was. I knew that that's what I had to do. You know, saying that it's a memoir sounds so self-indulgent, and you know, it is hard to put yourself out there, especially when you're a reporter and you're supposed to have some distance. But in many ways, I'm not breaking new ground. I mean, look at my footnotes, look at my bibliography. I wanted the academics and the scholars to say, well, she has proper citation, she's read the work, she knows the research. But I knew that like regular people weren't reading that kind of work. Mm-hmm. And so the personal narrative had to come in. If it wasn't my personal narrative telling the stories of people to get that across. So, you know, I knew I had to construct it in an essay format that was, and some chapters are more personal than others. There's some places where I'm not very present at all. But I knew that I wanted to marry the scholarship from the past with issues that were happening today with personal stories. So, you know, I think one of the best compliments I've gotten, and these tend to be from Black people on the South Side, has been, wow, I didn't know this had a name. This is my story. Like, I grew up in this neighborhood. Or, you know, we hear segregation and we think that it just means colored water fountains or Brown v. Board of Ed. We don't really understand, like, why is most of the South Side, why is the Black South Side Black? Mm-hmm. And I think this gave people answers, or people not understanding why there were shortcomings in their neighborhood, that they're like getting to some of the root causes of that. Mm-hmm.